Hi everyone, I'm Harv, Ian Harvey, founder of Collective Intelligence, and this is Stuff That Matters Now. Welcome back everybody, and I am going to record this, that it's a beautiful day here in Manawatu. The sun is shining, it's about 24 degrees in early November, and just for the record, it's fine in the Manawatu, not blowing, okay, for the record. And today, I am interviewing Andy Lowe. Kia ora, Andy.
Kia ora.
And Andy is the CEO of a thing called Te Manawa here in the Minorities, and it's a museum of arts, science and heritage. Have I got that right, Andy?
Yes.
Yes, look at me go. I even wrote it down. Andy, thank you so much for your time. It's a Monday afternoon, and I'm so pleased it's a Monday because I'm fresh, and I'm really interested in this conversation because Andy's had a fascinating journey. He's got a fascinating job. Started in a totally different industry, and has moved through into this museum space, which is wonderful. And I've heard a little bit of your story, Andy, and I'm dying to dig into the rest of it. So let's just kick off, Andy. What gets you interested in museums?
Kia ora, Harv. Look, museums. I feel like museums can change the world. I feel like people can, just people's minds can be blown with things that happen in museums, and that's just anything that can happen during the day. It's not collections necessarily, or can be, but it's more, interaction you might have with someone. So yeah, museums can change the world.
And Andy, I'm going to go back to say you're a Pākehā, but your te reo is stunning. So should we go back and do you want to introduce yourself in that language?
Okay. Kia ora, Harv. E kui mā, e koro mā, e rauranga tere mā, e ngā mātāwaka, ngā paimaunga, ngā waiaua o te motu tēnā tātou. Ko tēnei te ringa o te tangata e noho nei ki raro i te marumaru o tarurua maunga. E rere te awa o Manawatu kia tāhuna ārua te kāinga o ngā tinewhetu ki te rangi ko rangitāni. E tā te kōrero mā tō raurau, mā tōku raurau, ka pūai te katoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Ka pā, that was stunning. Yeah, I have just so admired you to Aotearoa Māori. Command of that. Command is maybe not the right word, but yeah.
It's a journey, Harv. I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I've been learning and still learning, and will be learning forever, probably. Yeah.
So, Andy, where are you from originally? Where did you grow up?
Okay, so I was born in Wellington, and moved around Wellington a lot. We lived in different places, suburbs around Wellington. Settled in Petone. My family had a leathercraft shop and saddlery shop there, amongst other things, and lived a lot of my years in Petone. Yeah, and my dad was kind of a serial inventor, entrepreneur type of person, and we lived one door next to us was the mongrel mob. Down the road was the gear meat factory. We used to swim in Petone Beach, which was pretty much the Petone Sunrise, which was the gear meat effluent coming out into the sea. Spent a lot of time hanging around there and riding the horses in Gracefield and the factories, paddocks around the factories there. That's just a little bit. And
because Petone is quite different now, but I remember gear meat was such a big deal there.
It
wasn't a big works, but it was a very well known works there.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was a big identity of Petone, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I mean, it was a really poor place, when we lived there. And I thought we were quite flash having a shop, My dad and mum used to sleep there at night pretty much, trying to get the shop up and running. My dad invented a thonging machine to kind of make, leather thonging. And they spent most of their time there, really. My little brother was born there in a little room in the back of the shop almost. So, A leather what? leather thonging machine.
Thonging.
It's kind of like you put this big circle of leather on the machine, and it cuts the leather into this long strip, and then it rolls onto a reel.
Yeah.
And then that's your thonging. It's like a long leather strip.
It's called a thong.
It's called thonging. There you go. But now I know what thong, it's different now. Yeah, but that's right. Yeah, so we did a lot of that, and us kids worked there, packaging rivets and fixing saddles, and ended up riding the horses down at Gracefield.
So where were the horses kept?
Well, there was a couple of paddocks there was one small paddock between the DSIR building and another factory down there. A couple of paddocks, peppered between the factories. We used to ride them down there. And then over the Wainui or Mata Hill, which was a small road at that time, and over the fire breaks, yeah. But, that kind of thing.
And your father made saddles, leather in the saddles?
Yeah.
So horses were part of the family, or was it just something the kids jumped on?
Kind of. I mean, we had done different things. My dad had done different things, and that was one that he settled on, sort of making stuff. And it was kind of the 70s, so there was all this fringed leather stuff going on, and it sort of took off.
Thonging.
And all sorts of, it was a fantastic time for us, kids there. We were helping in the shop, and it was full of hippies, making things, and there was pot everywhere, and there was leather dye, and we loved it because everyone was so nice to us, The hippies were really nice to us.
Yeah, and you'd have the tie-dye thing going on.
I mean, my mum and dad were a little bit older than the hippies, so they weren't quite, in that set, but it was kind of a mixture of stuff, and they were so nice, really nice people. And they might have been out of it, that's probably why they were, but they were also, just amazing sort of creative people. Yeah.
Did they live locally?
Yeah, they lived locally, and they were sort of... my uncle also had a leather thing going on at the Victoria Markets in Wellington. There was a thing called the Victoria Markets where you could have a stall, it was a leather craft stall. And so there were people from Wellington as well who were like crafts people who used to come and make stuff and sell stuff there. And then some of them ended up at Weta, and, our friend Brian, who was there, ended up doing all the green stuff for the Lord of the Rings movies, finding all the, like Gandalf's staff, he found that. So they're kind of all creative people, ended up doing things like that. But yeah, they were all making things in the shop, and it was such a beautiful place. We loved it.
And Andy, I'm intrigued. You started your life as a professional career as a mechanic.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And now you're running a... So were you a good mechanic?
No, I was shit at it. And I had to do my exams twice. The trade certificate test, the first time I failed. The second time I passed. The pass rate, to be honest, for some reason the number was 53 and I got 50. I was really annoyed by that. And then the second time around it was 50 and I got 53. So, not very good at it, but I loved it, and ended up working, running the tyre shop in Johnsonville for a while. And I used to bring little bunches of flowers in there. I think they were just trying to get me out of the workshop because I was causing too much damage in the vehicles. I mean, And so I ended up running the tyre shop in Johnsonville. And at that time, then a friend of mine was working, doing some street theatre and some set building for... what was she doing something for? Like corporate theatre, it was called at that time. So I helped make these props for that. And then I ended up working as a puppeteer on Brain Dead.
All right, yeah.
And which was one of Peter Jackson's movies. And so then, and then I ended up making some stuff for Buckle Street Museum, the old museum.
Were you any good at that?
Well, probably not really that good either at that, but people gave me a go, which was really nice of them. So
that would have been a really edgy era at the beginning of Jackson's career, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, the funny thing was, I had done some theatre, I had done drama studies and stuff before I went overseas, and ended up doing a bit of puppeteering in various plays in Te Pau and Takirua, things like that. But then in street theatre. But where am I going with this? So they needed a puppeteer, and there were 3 puppeteers working on Brain Dead, and they were cable puppets. And so Jeff Addison, who I'd been with at drama studies years before, and Ramon Aguilar Rivero at the time, Mexican puppeteer who'd done amazing work with glue sniffers and all sorts of things in Mexico, and then he came over here. So anyway, the three of us were doing these puppets for Brain Dead. But
so you've got the strings?
They're actually steel cables. Yeah, in those days, before CGI,
right.
And you pull these multiple cables. So you might have a couple of people, like I worked on a Fisher and Paykel ad where there was a dinosaur and I had to do the eye, and I had 2 cables for the eye, and then Ramon had 4 cables for the front feet, and so there's like about 50 cables in there, and you're doing this. It's quite funny. But yeah, a lot of the puppets on Brain Dead were CGI. So there's a bit where one of the girls is pinned to the wall by one of those ceramic flying ducks, that you used to have on your wall, and she's a zombie. So I had to work her arms behind the wall, on cables. So her arms were going like this, and someone was working her legs, so she was going like this as she was pinned to the wall with this ceramic duck. So it was very physical puppeteering in those days. And Baby Selwyn, I don't know if you know the story. Baby Selwyn is born out of a radio eating a rat. That's how he's born. Selwyn Toogoods. Anyway, long story, but and that was all cables, working those.
And what was Jackson like to work with back in those days?
Well, I didn't really have direct. I wasn't sort of working to him directly because his partner Tanya was sort of managing us, wrangling us puppeteers more, and he was just really sort of focused. He had someone who was massaging his neck the whole time, and I thought, I wish I had that job, because that looks that looks like you've made it when you're doing that job.
So you didn't do a lot directly with Jackson, but he was obviously about and involved. Were you surprised at how his career took off over time?
Yeah, I guess I was really, because when I worked on that movie, which was in the early 90s, I think he'd done Meet the Feebles and Bad Taste. I'm not sure if he'd done Meet the Feebles already, but definitely Bad Taste. And it was the zombie movie. As you know, Brain Dead's a zombie movie. That my mother, never wanted to watch, and it was the one I was in, or kind of in, and it was like this. It was a thing that people didn't really like, because it was full of blood and actually, food colouring. But it was, something that you weren't really. It was definitely on the edges of stuff. It wasn't something that people generally wanted to see, and so. But my brother, who was 10 years younger than me and had worked at the shop with some of these artists I'm talking about, he came up helping in the saddlery shop. He ended up working on all the Lord of the Rings movies. Yeah. So we kind of heard about it as it was going,
right.
As it was sort of developing. And I nearly went to work on Frighteners, but then stayed at Te Papa. Yeah.
We'll get to Te Papa soon. But look, I'm fascinated that I never saw Jackson's trajectory, because I watched his early work, which I didn't like much.
No, that's right.
It was all quirky, odd, low budget stuff.
What about Bad Taste?
Yeah. And,
the brain's falling on the ground.
How did he get from there to there? It was obviously people saw the creative talent in the guy.
Yeah, that's right. And he's so driven, it's just absolutely driven. And he was even then, 24-hour days. It was really full on, and really because actually in a way it probably was quite close to him. He was on every set that I was on, when I think about it, because it was small team, and everybody was very close, and so and he was really particular. Everything would need to be a certain way, and it was interesting. Yeah.
So Andy, you also travelled too, didn't you?
Yep.
What part was what stage did you travel?
Well, I actually got a degree, first person in our family to get a degree, except for Uncle Terry, who was kind of who everyone thought was crazy. So that's why apparently he was crazy. Was he went to university,
Yep, it'll happen.
So because no one else in our family went to university, and so I was like the first one, who went there, and obviously I went crazy too, according to lots of them. But I went there, did a degree in languages and a whole lot of other stuff, drama studies and bits and pieces, and then I went.
So you got better than 50%?
Well, only just. It was a different situation for me to be in. I wasn't used to being in those. It was different. It's a class thing, eh? It's all about class for me, and it was different for us to be in that environment. And anyway, so went overseas and hitchhiked around Europe for a while.
Just coming back, so when you're from a background that's not supposed to be at university, right? You're supposed to be a mechanic or doing leather work.
Leather work's fine,
right?
Yeah.
What's it like going into that space?
Well, the thing is, I think it probably depends on the person, because a lot of people would just go, flourish and do, not a problem. But I think for me, for lots of reasons, I was kind of always felt that I wasn't right, that I wasn't going to be, that there's something wrong with me, So I was going to be, I was a bad person, never going to do any good,
Yep.
So I think that's probably, I kind of took that everywhere we went really
Yep.
with me,
Yep.
and so for some reason that's just how I, kind of was, I guess.
And when you say a bad person, what does that mean to you?
Well, probably more that I was useless, no good at anything. That my maths was shocking, which it was. That pretty much everything I did wouldn't be good enough, and that I'd be found out, and that if I went to somewhere like university, then I'd definitely be kicked out.
They'd spot you.
Yeah, that's right.
They'd spot you and go, that boy there,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to be there.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It was just a matter of time that they'd go, oi, you don't belong here.
Yeah, that's right. And because I was a girl at that time, and I had lots of things like anorexia, and I was dealing with all this sort of stuff that makes you quite edgy in any way and anxious, because you, for whatever reason, you're not getting enough, whatever it is. So it's hard to know whether, things that, for instance, my dad was quite abusive, really. He would sort of, tell me how I wasn't very good at anything. So it's hard to know whether it was all of that or else, or stuff to do with, physiological things that happen when you don't eat enough, for instance, or whatever. So
Your man telling you that you're not good enough, that can be quite powerful.
Yeah.
So, Andy, we just dropped in there that you started your life as a female.
Yes.
So, thank you for bringing that up. And I think you are the first transgender person I've interviewed on this podcast. Won't be the last, and I feel a real privilege for this conversation that we can have. And when I first met you, you brought that up quite quickly because of the tone of the conversation, I remember, and I would have, never known. Yeah.
Well, it's not the sort of thing that I usually talk about with people, but for some reason you do that, Harv. You make people feel comfortable about stuff. Yeah.
So going to university, your old man has told you you're not good enough. Are you battling this? You've got anorexia. Are you battling with your identity at that point? Like when do you start thinking I'm in the wrong body?
Yeah, that's right. Well, pretty much my whole life, although I hadn't really put two and two together. I'd been doing different stuff and tried different things, and got involved with all sorts of different sorts of things. But
are you harming yourself?
No, not at that stage. No, I mean, although not eating anything for a long time, it's pretty bad for you.
Yep.
That wasn't so good. Nearly ended up in hospital a couple of times, and also in Ward 27. Spent a bit of time as an outpatient there with Anne Hall, who was a specialist in anorexia. So yeah, some of that stuff was going on. But yeah, pretty much on and off my whole life. Yeah.
And look, it's Andy. It's just really hard for me to imagine that. I can imagine anorexia. I can imagine, I've heard what people go through and this need for control or something in their life, and I'm no psychologist, but you hear all sorts of reasons for it.
Yeah.
None of it sounds a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's right.
So you got through university, you're a young woman, and you think, what, I'm going to travel?
Yep, that's right. So my intention was to go to South America, and what I didn't know about that time was that my grandfather had Spanish ancestry, and we didn't talk about that. I didn't find that out till quite a few years later. But I ended up going to Spain, and the idea was to learn Spanish properly and then go to South America. I didn't get to South America. Still haven't got there, but I'm going to get there one day. But I did learn Spanish and ended up going out with a couple of girls who I met along the way. I was hitchhiking through France, and I was getting hassled a lot hitchhiking. So I got this 3-speed bike from a hypermarché, a supermarket, just a normal 3-speed bike, and went from France over the Pyrenees into Spain. Travelled around there for a few months, sitting on benches, and ended up sleeping outside. I slept outside all the time. Slept outside.
You'd be very pleased that the anorexia kept your weight down.
Well, that's right. I wasn't. I'd sort of got over it a bit by then, I think. But then went to and just ate things that were on the side of the road, and travelled around like that a bit, and did a bit of work picking fruit and bits and pieces, and then met people, and ended up living in this woman's commune for a couple of weeks, and people sort of took me in, got quite a few rides on trucks, when it was getting a bit hard work on the bike, and then ended up riding down to Greece through Italy, and
on the same bike.
On the same bike, yeah. Slept outside Romeo and Juliet's tomb in Verona. I slept everywhere outside, and then went through Italy, down through Yugoslavia at that time, and into Greece, and stayed in Greece. Ended up picking fruit down there, and got into a little bit of trouble, and then stayed there for a while. Went to Turkey, things like that.
Are we allowed to talk about the little bit of trouble?
Yep, we can. Yep, that's right.
Because let's just go back before that. You were biking around Europe by yourself.
Yeah.
A young woman.
Yeah, I was 21. Yeah. Yeah, it's not that young, I guess, these days, but yeah, I was 21. Yeah.
And did you feel brave doing that?
I didn't really think about it. I guess I had a different, I don't know, sometimes I was quite scared. Things happened that were quite scary. And I was quite alternative in a way. I was thinking about the other day, Kirsty wears this skirt made of ties, and I was wearing a skirt made of ties, and I thought, people must have thought I was really, crazy at that time, cycling around these quite conservative countries, in quite alternative kind of clothes in a way. But it was quite scary a lot of the time. Yeah, and I remember sleeping because I'd done 100 k's one day on the 3-speed bike, and just slept for about 12 hours in a row, and woke up thinking, this is crazy. What am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. But I wanted to hang out in Spain and learn Spanish, and then get to South America. That was my plan.
And you learned Spanish?
I did learn Spanish. Yeah, I did learn Spanish. Not as well as I would have, hoped to, but I did learn it. Yeah. And
a little bit of trouble?
Yeah. So I met this girl from Quebec. Her name was Renee, and she wanted to go to Turkey. So I wanted to go to Turkey too. So we went to Turkey and we hitchhiked around, and it was winter, and it was snowing, and we kind of had to stand on the side of the road sometimes, and as you do when you're hitching, so we got picked up by a couple of guys who took us to a taverna that they owned in a place called Kanakali, which is near Gallipoli, because we were heading up to Gallipoli. And and so then we had a meal with them, and we drank quite a bit of Retsina, as you do. And then suddenly I remember being in their car, and they were driving really fast. Renee and I along a really like a motorway and out over the hills, and next thing I know, the guy in the front had jumped in the back and he was going for it with Renee, and I was fighting him, and I got my little pocket knife out of my pack and thought about doing something with it, then I didn't. Remember vomiting, and it was pretty nasty. And then eventually, the guy who was driving tried to tell him not to do that anymore, and he didn't. And we got into the mountains. It was dark, and I kind of pushed. We came to a bend that was, we slowed down a bit. So I pushed Renee out and chucked myself out on top of her and chucked her down the hill. And there was a cliff, and we just ran down the cliff in the bush until we got to the bottom, which was this kind of little creek. And it was freezing, but we could hear them shouting for us, looking for us. She didn't have many clothes left on or anything like that, and we just stayed there until we couldn't hear them calling anymore. And I think it was starting to get light, and anyway, we climbed back up to the top of the hill, and another truck came past, just a little truck, and took us to a cafe that he had, and because she didn't have many clothes on, he was kind of he was thinking that we were prostitutes, so he was kind of really trying something on as well. And so the whole thing was pretty nasty. We got there, and
this is in Turkey.
It's in Turkey, yeah. Yeah. It was, early 80s. Not a lot of women hitchhiking anyway, and it was silly of us to be doing that. We didn't really know any better, I guess. Well, we weren't thinking about it probably. So then the police came, and they thought it was a big joke. They thought it was kind of a bit funny, and everyone was laughing and joking about the whole thing. And Renee wanted just to disappear and not do anything, not writing, not report it, And so I said to her, look, we need to report it, and we ended up reporting it. And then, so we went down that route really, only because our packs were still in the boot, so we needed to get them somehow, And so they found the guys, and the guy, one of them ended up going to jail. I don't know what happened to the other one, but I always felt really bad about that. These two girls, white girls, going to Turkey and causing havoc, in these people's lives. So it preys on my mind about that, Interesting. And years later, I got a letter saying, would you pardon that guy? And I contacted Renee in Quebec, which I hadn't spoken to her for years. And she said, no, there's no way I'm going to pardon him for what he did to me, because she was raped, full on raped, and numbers of times. And she said, you saved my life. And I said, did I really? I didn't save it early enough, and there's no way we're gonna let him get away with it, So it was kind of an interesting situation, because I felt like it was her call, even though, it was interesting.
It's funny, just when you're telling that story, Andy, it seemed for me a long way from home. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
When you're telling that story, I'm going, oh my God, that's a long way from home.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. I know. Yeah. And what were you thinking, really, doing that? But, hitching around Turkey in the early 80s, So some privileged way of looking at the world,
Yeah.
In that way. So,
how long did you travel for?
I was away for nearly 4 years.
Yep.
Yep. Came back in 1987. Yep.
And there were some good moments?
Absolutely. Yeah, I know. This feels like violin territory. Eh? No, absolutely. It was amazing. Yeah. Made some really good friends, hung out with some amazing people. I worked for a short time at a garage there next to a taverna, and there was this fantastic bunch of people.
Hello, I'm a terrible mechanic.
Yeah, that's right. They were fantastic, and we'd go to the taverna for ouzo at lunchtime, which helped everything. And people at that time, the one I worked at was a little village called Puppeteer, which is on the Corinthus Canal. and little villages of lemon trees and farms and goats and you know, and at that time you could drive around with no doors on your car, you know, so we didn't have to worry about we're just keeping them going, you know, so I could kind of manage that part of it. Yeah, they were amazing times. Yeah.
And what brought you home, Andy? Why did you come back?
My grandfather was really sick, and I was really close to my grandfather, so that was one of the things that was on my mind. I had no money though, and I had hooked up with this with a French guy who was called a pied noir. So he was born in Algeria, but he was of French descent, and so he was living in Greece, picking oranges at the time, and he. I wanted to bring him back to New Zealand with me. My grandmother was separated from my grandfather, but she worked at the leather shop, and she helped Mum. She helped Mum sort of make things, and she would have a little table outside with her knitting, and so she used to knit slippers, and she knitted so many slippers to save up for me to come back, and that was the money that I had to come back, was all of her money from her selling her slippers on the table outside the shop in Petone. So she actually paid for me to come home, and yes, I came home.
Fabulous. With the fella?
No. We sent him the money, but he lost the money, and then none of it, you know. Yeah, that was a really yeah.
So what age? This is 1987.
Yeah.
How old are you then?
26. Yeah.
Okay. And through
25,
the sale
25.
Through the sale of the slippers, which
Yeah.
is fabulous, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you're back here,
Yep.
and you're thinking, what am I going to do with my life?
Yep, that's right. Yep.
And
So, my grandfather, you know, really amazing kind of artist. He used to do things like he would paint a whole lot of holly. He would go and visit my grandmother, who they didn't get on with. They'd split up years ago. But he used to go. She'd get home, and he'd have painted all these hollyhocks up her wall, you know, or he would be staying at her house and have painted roses all over her toilet seat. And he was like the serial painter, you know. He couldn't stop painting, you know? And she used to get really annoyed with him. But anyway, he wanted me to go.
is that why they didn't get on?
I don't. There's so many things there. It was hilarious. But anyway, he wanted me to go to teachers' college, and I thought, yeah, no, good idea. I'll go to teachers' college. So I went to teachers' college, and for about 4 months, and then they started. I went to Brooklyn School, and I guess I was a lesbian at that time, or not that I thought of myself that way, but I wasn't really, you know. I remember having these pink tights, or orange tights with witches all over them, and I went to do the first, what do you call it, section. You know,
yes,
I had to go
yes.
to Brooklyn School, and they were singing, they were doing the Pied Piper story, and I thought, there's no way this is too old fashioned, this is too conservative for me. There's no way I'm going to be doing this stuff. And so, anyway, I left teachers' college, which was probably a bad idea. But
You wanted to talk about witches and...
Well, I don't know. I just felt like the whole thing was really conservative. You know, the whole. I just felt like it was decades behind where teaching should be. You know, it was a really old-fashioned story.
So was the lesbian thing a new phase?
No, I'd been out with women before I went before I went overseas. I had been in a relationship with a woman who, we had quite a bit of, we fought a lot, you know. And then when I left, she ended up going out with a guy who she's still with, actually. And her mother was really annoyed with me. Her mother had been going out with a woman for many years as well. And her mother's was quite a well-known writer in New Zealand at that time, Frances Cherry. And I ended up working with... so Jane was the girl I went out with, and I ended up working with her brother Robert at Buckle Street at the museum. So, you know, it was kind of a small world in the end. But yeah. So yeah. So
you've done the overseas thing, you've done the teaching for 4 months.
Yep.
And the Pied Piper, you just thought, no, big up, I won't do that.
Yeah.
Then what?
What did I do? Oh, then what was I doing? I was kind of, well, then I was doing a lot of things. I was a prostitute for a short time, and then which was interesting, and then I went to...
Did you enjoy that?
No, not really. No, I didn't enjoy that at all, but I needed some money, I guess. And that was part of what you did, I guess. But it was interesting. Some of the stories were pretty funny.
What did you learn through that stage, Andy?
What did I learn? Well, I think I learned to laugh at myself a lot. I remember there was one client who, because then I went to study to be a mechanic, did my apprenticeship after that, and I remember being at Newtown, Constable Street Garage, which was also sort of run by the Gray brothers of Island Bay, and kind of a dangerous place to work, really. But I was there, and I got a phone call from an old client who said, yes, we need someone who wants to, he wants to put nappies on him, and you'd be the perfect one to do that. And I remember talking about this at the in the garage, like talking about this or having this phone call, while I was sort of sorting screws in the on the back of, literally on the back of the, at the workshop on the bench, or cleaning car parts in the solvent bay or whatever. So I love those kind of juxtapositions, in my life. Things have happened. Strange things in strange places.
I was going to say, cleaning car parts and talking about...
I know.
That's
quite magic moments, really.
I'd imagine you've really screwed with some people, some mechanics' heads.
Well, the guy, when I went to work at a garage in Johnsonville after that, and he became, the service manager there became one of my best friends. He was pretty amazing, and he drove this beautiful 1947 vehicle to our wedding. We had a wedding at Lyle Bay, Arohanai, and he drove it there, and it was his thing, and he was going to drive Aroha there, and so we became really good friends. And he was quite an amazing guy too, because he had a massive weight loss. He'd been like 200 kilos or something his whole life, and then suddenly he lost a whole lot of weight. So suddenly he was kind of a different person, apparently. But I didn't meet him when he was that big. So he had this fantastic kind of almost a double story going on. That this was his life, and he had girlfriends and he had all this new stuff. So we, I don't know, for some reason we just got on, and he had a fantastic sense of humour. I mean, I remember him, he was so good, because some of the apprentices in the garage were quite, a bit rough about having a girl apprentice there too, so they would, I remember going to work one time, there was a dead rat in the bottom of my toolbox, right. Or people would put little things, little screws in my sandwiches, Yeah. It was quite funny in a way, but he was really good with that, he used to sort them out, and he had a good way with bringing everyone on.
It's funny, Andy, you laugh about that, but it's pretty degrading, isn't it, of women?
Well, when you think about it, I mean, and there's still not many women who are mechanics, eh? No. I guess these days, because it's all computer based, and it's
there's
a different
no reason
world.
Why they shouldn't be.
Well, I don't know, because there's lots of reasons why anyone could be one if they wanted to be one, but I guess it's still a man's world in that way or whatever.
So Andy, just look, I'm going to jump ahead to the museum thing, because we could literally talk all day. I mean, I knew this was going to be fascinating. I knew it was going to be fascinating. So how do you go from mechanics into museum world?
Yeah. Well, what happened was a friend of mine was doing, I think I said before, was doing corporate theatre, and which is making models and making. We had to make this giant tennis ball for this theatre thing that we're doing for some company, and things like that. And anyway, so they needed some model making doing at an exhibition and at the old museum before Te Papa was built, and so I ended up helping out doing that, just sort of casually, and then a job came up there as a preparator, or kind of helping with installation of exhibitions, and what I loved about Te Papa at that time, there's an amazing friend of mine, Mike Huaki, there, who let me have a go at things, and there weren't any other people on the team at that time who could do welding, so I was the welder, and then there was, they'd let me have a go with fiberglass, and they were amazing. They let me have a go with all sorts of things, and I had a fantastic boss, Bronwyn Symes, who's sort of started the redevelopment of the Christchurch Art Gallery in the end, and a whole lot of other stuff. But she let me do these resin blocks before people were doing resin blocks, really.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to do this giant prototype of the new Te Papa. It was going to be a kind of a tunnel of resin blocks full of crazy things in, and so that it was this prototyping, experimentation, trying new things with any materials kind of stuff that was going on. So I loved it. They're amazing. Yeah.
And so that's the nuts and bolts stuff of creating stuff, but which is not about a museum. That's just stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Stuff for the museum. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big transition.
Oh yeah. Good point. Okay, so that was a beginning of the Te Papa stuff, and then
so Te Papa would have been.
No, Te Papa hadn't been built yet. So I started as a casual model maker, installer type person at the end of 1994, and Te Papa opened in February 1998. So I had this kind of like couple of years of doing stuff, and the first year was kind of making things and being part of exhibitions. Then suddenly it was all on for the new Te Papa, and they decided they didn't want people making stuff who were on the team, but contracting, being responsible to contract people in to do that stuff. So I became the project coordinator for models and forms. So everything that wasn't infrastructure for Te Papa, that was my job to get made. So like the taxidermy mice or rats, taxidermied everything, all the model fish, the giant trees, coconut palms, anything, resin blocks, anything that wasn't built, your usual building walls and stuff. And so that was really cool. Yeah, it was a good job.
That's a big job, Andy.
It was a big job, yeah. And I hadn't done, it was all about contract management and, tendering and, budgets and, things like that. So, I mean...
No primary school teacher, no 3-speed bike.
That's right, no. That's right, just thrown in the deep end,
Yeah.
And my friend Gerda was looking after the mechanical interactives, and we were sitting back to back in the project office in Wakefield Street with some of our other team who'd been brought down there from Buckle Street when it closed. And we were just like, this is like, but it was so exciting, and we were just caught up in the whole Te Papa thing.
Oh.
And Cheryl and Cliff were amazing, and they, just blew us away with the excitement of it all. The new thing was going to be bicultural, so we were kind of like transfixed and just wanted to do the best we could, really.
There was a woman, I was going to say famous, but there was a woman who was a contract manager for the whole project, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was quite a few, yeah.
But I remember there was this one woman who kept it on track, and it came in, I think, under budget, and everybody was just dead scared of it.
Yeah, that's right.
Apparently she was just a real taskmaster.
Yeah, I got a feeling you mean Cheryl Sutherland, who was the CEO.
Might have been.
Yeah, she was. And she did used to say on time, on budget. And she was amazing.
Yeah.
She was amazing. She was a force to be reckoned with.
And I remember the interview on National Radio, and they said, people are scared of you. And And she was just like, so?
I know. She was fantastic. Well, I remember doing, because then after that I got onto different projects, and I remember doing a concept, or sort of being the project manager for the quake breaker room, which shows you where the ice-based isolators are. It's got a picture of Mum's house in there, actually. We had to find a photo suddenly. And she said, take that away, that's rubbish. Do it again. That's what, because she was that staunch, and she was right. We needed to come up with something more creative and everything. So, but yeah, she was really straight up. And
so your creative stuff is just going off at this point?
Well, yeah, in a way. I mean, I sort of worked, so it was quite business-based, the kind of contract management of the models and forms in a way, it was kind of like tendering process and people, appointing people, and then they do it and whatever. So, but some fantastic things happened where we had to get the fish models made, and suddenly a shark would be stuck in someone's neck, net up in, the top of the Hokianga or somewhere, so we have to go up there and see if it was going to be all right for the model, and, so some of those stories are really cool, how you end up with those models, and so the models are still in the collection, and and then after that I went on to kind of exhibition project management, becoming the project manager for getting exhibitions built and things like that, and we had some fantastic other things to do with the model, like giant squid model that we had to get made, and then suddenly it was for an exhibition called Voyages, and suddenly the guy who was an expert in giant squid in New Zealand, he's the foremost international expert, Dr. Steve O'Shea, found a testicle sac on a giant squid that washed up on Lyell Bay Beach. So so the model had to change entirely, you know, and so it was late. You know? It was late because it was a new thing that had been discovered.
Yeah.
You know? And so things like that happened. It was hilarious, you know. But because of my measurements, my maths prowess, the model was actually 20 mil too big to fit through the top doors. So my friend and the team had to go. You know, it's like 250 kilos, and there's 12 people standing there holding the model at the top of the stairs, going, "Andy, did you measure the?" You know, so yeah.
Oh,
it continued to sort of travel with me.
That's
lack of
superb.
attention to detail around some of these things. But I mean, you know, that sort of happens.
And Andy, I think I've read that this was during the period that you started considering transitioning.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Yeah.
Look, what's that? What is that like? Like, what point do you think? I don't know what you think.
Mm.
What do you go through before that?
Well, I mean, it had been on my mind for quite a few years. I'd had quite a few. Geez, I sound like a sad sack. I'd had quite a few issues with, you know, alcohol, drugs, and other things. Trying to deal with some of these things in a way, and I kind of kept putting it to the bottom of my, you know, just get over it and get on with it and do your life, you know. So eventually, the funny thing is, I was working on an exhibition called Body Odyssey at the time at Te Papa, and a friend of mine said, "Look, just go," you know, because I'd been getting quite down about the whole thing, and just like, it's not, you know, I've got to do something about this. And
got to do something about what?
Well, I just felt like I was in the wrong body. I felt like I just felt like it was wrong. I needed to not be in a female body. That's what I felt like. Yeah. At that time, and it had been going on for a long time, and I didn't want people to relate to me as a female. Was a lot to do with it. It used to really bug me, and even when I was a mechanic at the garage, I was, "What do you mean you do?" No, it just used to prey on my mind, you know.
Yep. So it was always there.
It was always there, yeah, and it used to pop up again, and things like would happen. Things that I've probably never said, where the Turkish guy ended up in jail. I thought to myself, well, when I'm, you know, in a completely different form, when he comes out, he can never find me. I had things that were going on in my head as well that weren't really, didn't really make sense because it wasn't about that, you know. But it was like that will also help. You know, it's just strange things that would go on. But I did feel like I'd feel more aligned, you know, more like me if I wasn't female.
Andy, can I just say something? The last thing I think about you is a sad sack. Right? No, and I need to say that because I have no idea what it's like to go through your journey, and I can't think of anything more. I'm sure it's not the most difficult thing in the world, but I can't think of many other things to go through over that long period to go, I'm in the wrong body.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love hearing these days about, you know, young people, and people are listening to them, you know.
Yes.
And just, it's a whole new world. It's fantastic.
We've got a collective intelligence member who has got a child who started off, you know, in the female body, and very early on, you know, it was quite apparent that she was in the wrong body, and they've embraced that.
It's fantastic.
And you just look at it, and you know, it's been fabulous to watch.
It's amazing. I love it. I mean, when I think about it now, obviously, you know, my dad would have really liked a ballerina type, you know. Not that we did ballet in our family, but, you know, someone who was delicate and a girl, you know, would be good. but I so disappointed him in so many ways.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's a different world now, you know. People can do different things. It's fantastic. Yeah.
So, And look, I had the great privilege of, in my collective intelligence team, I had this wonderful woman, Eva Lewis, who was transgender, started life as a male and transitioned to female. And I remember a similar conversation.
Right.
I said, where did you think you were in the wrong body? I said, when I was 3.
Yeah, that's right.
No?
Yeah.
When I was 3, it was just,
Yeah.
What I really enjoyed the conversation with Eva was she was an architect, and how people treated her as a male compared to how people treated her as a female.
Yep.
Was a bit of a shock to me.
Yeah.
Because what's it been like for you?
Yeah, it's a really good point. Well, I often wonder, like I was the exhibition manager. After Te Papa, I went to work at the Waikato Museum, and I was the exhibition manager there, so, getting exhibitions built and working with the team and, doing that sort of stuff. And then my the director of the museum left, and I was acting director there for a short time, for 6 months, which I hadn't done before, and then my mum was sick, and I applied for a job down here, and I don't know whether I would have had the confidence to do that, one, and two, whether people would have thought that I could do that as a woman. I don't know, because I was quite different in a way, or parts were quite different. So I often think about that, whether that would have actually, what would have happened. When I applied for the job here, no one talked about it, and we still haven't talked about it for years. Apparently, I know, and apparently people knew about it, but no one talked about it, and all because all my certificates and things had been, we changed to my new name, and trade certificate in automotive engineering, and Bachelor of Arts, wānanga certificates and stuff like that. So, yeah. So I often think about that.
Do you miss being a woman?
No. Definitely not, no. And that was, that process started 21 years ago. Yeah.
How long does it take?
It can take forever, really. It can take as long as you want it to take, or as long as... it's really... Some parts are really expensive. And these days I know that you can get things done by, just the government will pay for things. But in those days we had to pay for things ourselves. So, yeah, it can be quite expensive. It can take decades, yeah.
And Andy, the people working around you, how do they cope with it at the time?
Some people are really good. I guess it was the first time it happened at Te Papa, as far as I know. Either way, male or female. And I had a fantastic boss, and I said to her, look, I'm going off to have a double mastectomy. She said, what are you doing in your holidays? That's what I'm doing. And at that time, I'd been having hormones for a few years anyway. And she was like, she said, oh, you always say something surprising. I remember her saying that. And I said, yeah. And so I was working on the Body Odyssey exhibition at the time, which I always think is quite funny. And then I come back a few months later after that. But a couple of people on the leadership team there, two gay, one lesbian and one gay at the time, were really good about it, and they told everybody. And another guy who I thought would be pretty bad about it in a way, or not very supportive, he was really good. He kept going around saying, because when I came back, my name was Andy, and he said, no, it's Andy. And every time anyone tried to call me something else, he would say, no, you need to call him Andy. And he was amazing, so people really surprised me. And I had a lot of support from the Māori team there, because I'd been in the kind of all the things, together, the kapahaka groups and the te reo groups and all those sorts of things. And I remember Hema at the time, who was our kai karanga, saying, and she looked after marae there, she was amazing. saying, no, you just go in the front row now. you stay in that kawaka team, group, you just go in the front row. She was amazing, and her son was also amazing, Tamahu, who's at Toi Māori now. They were really quite open-minded when you think about it for those days. Yeah.
Yeah.
There were some people who were, pretty anti, but I was also really quiet about it. It was like, don't talk about the war or something, just just go and sort it out and come back to work. And I was a bit of a workaholic, so I used to just, right, that's done, we'll move on, sort of thing, so.
And the workaholic thing was, that people were workaholics for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah, that's right. And I loved my job anyway, and we had a certain time frame to get it done. So it was about just getting it done. And I'd come up through the Te Papa heady sort of project management, like thinking about Te Papa being open, everyone was really excited. So I was kind of in that kind of mindset that you just wanted to do the best you could for Te Papa, that's what I felt like. So.
Are you a workaholic now?
No, I don't think I am. No. I'm obsessive, I think, because I feel like I really do think that museums can make a difference and can change people's lives. My life was changed by working at a museum. I feel like you can do, these places can do that.
Yep.
And not just about that, but the fact that they were so open when I first started there about letting me experiment with things that I'd never used before, and that I'd never seen that anywhere else. I thought that was really amazing.
It's interesting. My whole view of Te Papa has not changed. I've always loved the place, but I think, wow, if they can encourage all that and embrace all that, that's fabulous.
Yeah, that's right. You don't see that, eh?
That is a fabulous, fabulous thing.
I think it's. I do think about it as a movement. I think that if you're in that space where it's energetic and it's changing things, then it is like a movement. It's amazing. Yeah.
So now you've got this role here. Tell me about that.
Well, I applied for the job here. Aroha is very encouraging, my partner. We've been together since 1997, and she's always trying to get me to think about doing something that I love doing, right? And so she said to me, and also trying to make me feel better about myself, I think, in a way, too. And so she said, right, you can try that job and see what, see how you go. So
Where did you meet?
We met. I lived in a warehouse in Island Bay, drove my ute in there and had the fire going, and she came to we had a party there, New Year's Eve party. That's how I met her. Yeah, she came with some friends. Yeah, and that was it, really.
And you've got a couple of kids.
We have, yep. We've got 2 kids, and they're 12 and 14 now. So when Niwa was born, we moved up. He was 9 months old when we moved to Waikato to live in Raglan for 4 years, and then Tahu was born up there too. So, yeah.
And do they know that you've transitioned?
No, they don't.
Yeah.
No, yet. No. So that is a conversation that we're going to have pretty soon, probably. Yeah.
Why haven't you told them?
I feel like I've been living in this illusion of trying to be normal. I feel like I've been trying to be normal, and I'd like to be living as a. I once saw this couple, and they were both women, but one used to go out to work, and I used to do section clearing, and I used to clear their section for them because it used to get overgrown with gorse, and I'd go back. And one woman would go out to work, and she had she'd wear a suit, and then the other woman, so she would come home at night, and the other one, I could see through the window now and then ironing, and I thought, I just want a normal life where people have a normal, I'm this one and that's the other one, and no one thinks about it anymore, So I think I was in that space with the kids. I was just trying to give them a normal, sort of whatever I thought was normal, but that's not, it's not me, and my life has never been normal, you know. So I don't know what I was thinking, really.
Good luck with that when you do it.
Yeah.
Do you... That's interesting. Shame. Sorry, you're going to say...
No, I just remembered what I was going to say was that Tahu, my youngest, I was driving him to school this morning, and he said, you know, I trust, there's three bunches of people I trust in the world: my family, my friends, and the pick and save stick man. And I said, what do you mean the pick and save stick man? You know, where's that? Oh well, I just trust him. Like, okay, fine. You know, I'm thinking to myself, oh, you're not going to trust me when you find out, you know, about my life, kind of thing. Anyway, that's what I was just thinking.
Do you think that's the case? Do you think that's real?
I don't know. I hope so.
It is just a story, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I don't know, but I do hope. I mean, there are glimpses of our unusual, whatever you want to call it. You know, life. It's just a normal life, but because Aroha works with Rainbow Youth, you know, Kuaru, Inside Out, and so you know, she's often talking about or talking to, or there's a lot of Rainbow kids involved with their lives. Aroha's best friend, who she went to school with, is she's been with another woman for years, and they've got a transgender kid too. You know, so it's not two. We haven't got, not that we know of, but so we're not isolated from that world. You know, it's not like I'm just being a mechanic in a kind of a, you know, conservative world. So yeah, I don't know how it's going to go actually.
Andy, we touched on this before we started this conversation, so it's not out of the blue, but the whole shame thing, you know, we all have the shame thing going on at times. Has that been a big deal for you?
Yeah, it has. I think that my life has been kind of ruled by shame, really. Just about everything I think about, and talking about the collective intelligence stuff has kind of made me think about that more. There's a pattern to the shame, you know. It's that I'll do something that I think in my life is I'll do something that I think other people will think is cool or think is good to do, and then I'll feel ashamed about it, and then I'll do another thing. It's kind of a pattern. So yeah, I'm just aware of that. But yeah, it is a big thing for me, I think.
Fascinating. Do you think that the journey you've had makes you better equipped for this life in the whole museum space?
Well, I think it's important for people in these kinds of really conservative spaces to, you know, to have knowledge of other worlds and other ways of being. Yeah, I think it's really important. It's really important. The thing is, you have your voice though. You can't just. Well, you can just carry on doing, you know, trying to be normal. But if you don't speak up, you know, from your experience and from your life, then all these opportunities missed, you know, for inclusion and for doing things differently in the whole museum world, because it is quite a conservative space still. And I had a interview for a job in New Zealand, and they said, "You're the kind of director we need in 5 years' time." And I thought to myself, okay, but I'm not sure, you know, what they mean about that. They said ours is a very conservative environment. I thought, okay. I'm not sure whether it was because I was trans or whether because, you know, my sort of crazy ideas that I have, which a lot of people have anyway. So I don't know which part they thought was too conservative in their community for someone like me, you know. So I think we've got a long way to go in these kinds of spaces, and there's still a class thing there, still too, you know, from where you come from and where you think you should, where you're allowed to go, you know.
Are they crazy ideas or are they just ideas?
Well, they're just ideas, you know. They're just ideas, and they're things that I think a lot of people have, you know, you can change the world with these things. I think you can change these kinds of environments with these things. So
these things being museums.
Yeah, I think
So a museum in my little brain is as boring as shit.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a place that your mother made you go
Yeah.
on a wet day because there was nothing else to do.
That's right. Yeah.
But you have a different view than that.
Well, just where you've got this sort of ripple effect where, for instance, with International Women's Day we started to do here for a while. There was a woman cabinet maker from UCOL. She came and ran courses called the Pink Hammer for women from our workshop here. And then there was the truck mechanic, who brought her Big Mac in, the big truck into the showed people. I think there's just different ways of looking at the world. That you can actually show people different things and show each other different things and rub up against each other in so many cultures and genders and that's what's exciting. Just things that people haven't thought of, putting those together, and it can blow your mind, really. I think.
The last time I was at a museum was a month ago up in Taranaki, in New Plymouth,
Yep.
and 3 hours just disappeared looking
Right.
at the history of Taranaki and the Māori Wars and a whole range of stuff, and it was just it was fabulous because it's so accessible.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it's designed for somebody like me with a short attention span. I can look at that. It was just
Yeah, that's right. It's pretty cool, eh?
It's very, very cool. And I don't know why, but I trust museums
Right. Yeah.
to give me accurate information.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
Is that?
Yeah.
Should I trust
Yeah,
museums?
well, that's right. I mean, the thing is, that's the thing. Should you really?
Do you trust museums?
Do I trust museums? I don't know if I do trust museums, really. I mean, I'd like to be.
Crap.
I'd like to be challenged by museums. I don't want to feel. I guess I don't want it such a passive thing to come out of museums.
Okay. Okay.
I don't mind trusting them. That's fine. But that's a byproduct. You've got to be. For me, it's excited, energized, challenged. Think about things differently. Blow your mind. That's what I feel like museums should do.
Okay, so that's different. So I was going from the point of if the museum says this, then it must be true.
Right. Yeah.
And you're coming from a totally different point of view, aren't you?
Because I don't really believe in that elitism thing of museums either. I don't believe that museums should be the voice, telling people that the sort of this is the way things are. That it's a collective thing, it's a community thing,
Right.
and that all voices. I don't know about Destiny Church, but all voices, should be able to be, there and be able to bring themselves to it, and however they want to. I remember the day the attacks happened in Christchurch, and a Muslim woman coming here the day after that and saying that it was a safe place for them to be. It felt like that was, one of the safest places they felt like in the whole city, and that was pretty amazing. To have that kind of thing, so you can cradle things as well as kind of challenge. And I think if people feel safe to do that, then they can feel safe to bring themselves fully, and I think that's what would be great to do, because we still don't have a lot of trans people, multiple community, multicultural staff bases in most of our museums around the country. So how did and Māori, making sure that all of our museums are, because they're founded on this colonial thing, don't have to continue that way, so people bringing their own tino rangatiratanga to the space, however they want to see themselves there. Really, it's about their own power and their own, whatever community you are, bring yourself in your own power.
What do you see the future of Te Manawa, Andy?
Well, we are very excited about this thing that may happen, which is it's all part of the arts and cultural precinct. It's got to happen because this part here is all is quite earthquake prone, and
Oh no, you tell me.
yeah, just hold on to the table, and so there's great possibilities. We could connect with multiple communities in different ways, and in all the tertiary places, and the Wānanga, and it's just the IPU. I mean, all the things we do, it's all just like a crucible for whatever happens in the future, and it could be anything, as long as it's really energetic and inclusive, and just something amazing.
Ambiguity is obviously something that you're okay with.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I was just thinking, with your journey, you talking like that, in a museum setting, that might be quite scary for some people.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I didn't realise when I came here. They asked me, because you got to do what's the place going to look like in 5 years' time, or what's the vision, And I said, well, for me, it's about we called it Museum Beyond Boundaries, Museum Without Boundaries, because it means anything's possible, that you could do just any combination, any kind of... but it's quite hard for, I think, people... Community gets it, the community get it, but I'm not sure if a lot of museum people necessarily... Or I don't know if they get it, they probably get it, but they're interested in doing it in a way.
What's a museum supposed to do?
Well, for me, it's supposed to connect with communities and be a space that people feel like they can bring themselves, and they own it, and they literally take over. I feel like take over is a good word. People get upset with that word, but it's, for me, it's about taking over.
That phenomenally cheeky face. I'm just looking at your face. It's just like, yeah, come in here and take it over.
Yeah, that's right. And so getting, that sort of concept through is actually
mischievous.
Tricky.
Mischievous face.
It's quite tricky, though, because people don't really agree with it, I don't think, because it's supposed to be a place, that we tell you what you can do in it, You get to do this thing here.
Yeah.
By these rules.
Yeah.
By this time.
Yeah.
And it's going to cost you this much. Well, not always that, but...
And be quiet.
And be quiet.
And don't touch that.
Yeah, and there's so many rules. So it's been a journey trying to embed that philosophy and get that kind of thing supported, really, by museums in general, I think. Yeah. I feel like it's my challenge, I'm kind of constantly trying to figure out how to do it next and get in this way. Do
you piss a few people off?
Yeah, I do, definitely. Yep.
I can imagine that. I can imagine that in this space. Yeah, in the entrepreneurial world, you'd be welcomed, but in the museum world, you'd be a pain in the neck.
But it does make me question why I put myself in these places. That are going to be the hardest place to do anything in, It's interesting.
Look, Andy, the thing is, you haven't done... I can't think of much that you've done easily, It's just from this conversation going, yeah, well, that's consistent.
That's right.
Consistent. Yeah. Andy, we're going to wrap up soon. Are you a good father?
I'm a good father. I'd like to be better. I try. I do the fishing thing, try and connect. But yeah, I do really love my kids. I'd like to be better.
It's not the question. It's not the question.
I'm good in some ways.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm good in some ways. I don't, I never tell them they're stupid. I do all those things opposite to what my father did, So hopefully they'll feel, good about themselves. That's what I'm trying to do. So they can have good self-esteem, That's what I really love. Yeah. And got their kaupapa Māori in there, because Aroha's marae is in... it's in Normanby, Ngāti Ruanui in Normanby, and it's Ngarongo Marae, and just, so they feel connected there is really important for us. So hopefully in the future we'll do a lot more of that as well. But yeah.
Andy, thank you so much for your time. I mean, I'm cutting it short because You know, it's getting dark.
I know we need a whiskey now.
It's look, I was looking forward to this. It's funny, I was a bit nervous about this conversation. I didn't tell you that.
I was nervous too.
No, because it was funny. I wanted to. I wanted you to be relaxed, right? And so that was. I thought all I've got to do is Andy be relaxed, and because you're an awesome storyteller, and I thought just create a space, and so it was funny. And it's such a unique story, and it's one that's really important to be told. And it's. You know, before I met Eva and I said there's another podcast, I thought it was black and white, male or female. And I went home to my wife, who's a doctor, and I went, the sexuality thing. And she goes, oh yeah, you thought it was black and white? I went, well, yeah. And she went, yeah, nah.
Right, yeah, that's right.
No, it's not. No.
Yeah.
And so she was fabulous for me. She was so good to open up this whole different world and yeah, because I was judgmental and I was not understanding and thought you lot were just odd, you know. And that's, narrow-minded, you know, not being exposed to it, and I don't fully understand it, but I know it's a more common than I realised.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, it's. I mean, I get judgmental too, you know, and and even you know, with the new pronouns with they and them, and I think to myself, I'm just being an old bugger because you know this is what people are doing now, you know, and that's great. They should be doing that. It's awesome, and so it's constantly opening up your mind all the time to stuff. You know,
it's life keeps on emerging, and you know, Andy, the thing with the more open we can be to others and people not being like us and being okay with that, the world's a whole lot better place.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it'd be pretty bloody boring if we were, but it's something you've got to work at the whole time. And I slip into judgmental stuff, and especially now with where we are with this whole space with COVID and so forth. And
that's right.
You know, it's so much easier just to make people wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
Get your shit together, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I think it's, you know, there's so many secrets, eh? Everybody's got so many secrets, and
yeah. And a whole lot of things going on that you don't know exist and play. Yeah. Andy, is there anything else you want to drop into this conversation?
No, I mean, I guess the main thing also for me is just around, you know, our bicultural country and trying to help out with that, or at least support that in terms of, you know, te reo Māori, learning kaupapa Māori, and helping our whānau with that sort of stuff, because it's hugely important and it's our, you know, national language anyway. So yeah, that's all.
Andy, thank you, and good luck with terrorising the museum industry going forward. Keep up the wonderful work, and good luck with your children in that conversation.
Kia ora, ha. Awesome, thank you.
You've just been listening to an episode of Stuff That Matters Now, brought to you by Collective Intelligence. I hope you enjoyed listening to the fun stuff, the rugged stuff, and the complete stuff-ups that have helped this particular Collective Intelligence member evolve while making the world a better place. Do check out our Stuff That Matters Now podcast series on your favourite podcast provider, or visit our website www.collectiveintelligence.co.nz to get links to new episodes. Contact us if you want to learn more about how we can help you evolve yourself and others. Thanks for listening.